Welcome to the Connor's Corner segment of Ask the Lawyer. Now, as many of you know, we talk about history here on the show every once in a while. And in my mind, April 24th is a very important date because it commemorates the tragedy of the Armenian Genocide. And with me right now is a namesake of mine named Mike Connors, who knows a lot more about that part of history than I do. And how you doing today, Mr. Connors?
Okay, Mike.
First of all, tell the audience who you are. Should I tell you? Mannix, right?
Yeah, you tell them.
All right. Mannix is, the big show. But some people may not realize that Mike Connors is not your real name. What is your real name?
Krekor Ohanian. It's interesting, people say, Mike Connors, a good Irishman. And I say, well, no, that's not my real name. My real name is Ohanian. And they say, well, that's a good Irish name. And I say, no, it's spelled Ohanian, which is an Armenian name. And my first name was Krekor, the same as Kirk Krikorian. It's interesting because my father came over, ran off from the genocides back in the early 1900s. He ended up going to law school here, and he didn't know much about the English language, oddly enough, and his lawyer or student friend said, you can't become an attorney with the name Chitchin, which was his real name. Chitchin means in English cheater, and you're going to be a lawyer and they'll be calling you a cheater. So he took his father's name, which was Ohan Chitchin, and put an IAN on it, which always is the son of, and became Ohanian. And that's the name we went by until I started to act, and the agency said, well, there's another George O'Hanlon, and it's too given, we want to give you, and they changed my name.
Okay. And how'd you get the name Connors?
The agent said, Connors, that's a good all-American name, and at that time, it was very popular to be a Rock or a Race or a Rory and so he said, I know what we'll do. Do you have any nicknames? And I said, well, when I was playing ball in college, I had a little nickname of Touch. And he said, that's it, Touch Connors. So for a long time, I was known as Touch Connors until I convinced him I didn't like that name and changed it to Mike.
Okay, now you had a little bit of a relationship with John Wayne, I understand. You were an island in the sky?
Yeah, I had a very, very small part. That was really the second picture I had done. I'd had a pretty good part with Joan Crawford. And this came up after that. Bill Wellman, who was directing John Wayne, had seen me play basketball and was the first one got me interested in acting. And he said, come on, you're going to be in this picture, you're going to be in this picture. And so I did it. And that's how I knew John. It's funny because I just finished reading a 700-page book on John Wayne, which is really quite a fascinating book. And I just finished it last night, and I really enjoyed it. But it's interesting, on that set of Island in the Sky, I was waiting to use the telephone, which they had on the set on a kind of rolling little desk-like. And Wayne was on the phone, and I was standing there waiting for him to finish so I could use the phone. And I heard his side of the conversation. And he said, no. He said, I told you I'm not interested in doing television, but I got this kid here that's fantastic. His name is Jim Arness. He'd be perfect for this part. And it was Gunsmoke. And they gave Jim Arness the part, and the rest was history.
Okay, well, James Arness was in that film, too. That was a great cast, an interesting cast.
Yeah. Well, Jim Arness was under contract to Batjack Productions.
Okay, so, eventually you got your big break in Mannix. How did that come along?
I drove over to the lot, which was then Desi and Lucille Ball's lot, and I had an old 1937 Bentley convertible. And I pulled in the parking spot, and I went to my appointment, and I came back, and a voice yelled at me from the second floor, hey, Mike, I want to talk to you about that car. Wait a minute. And he came down, and it was Lucille Ball's then husband, the comedian, what was his name?
Desi Arnaz?
Anyway, we got to talking about cars. He said, I collect old cars. And I said, yeah, we talked about the cars and so on. And then he said, we just got a script I read. It's called Mannix. And he says, you'd be perfect for that. He said, wait a minute, I'll get it, read it, and let me know what you think. So we went back upstairs, and he brought it down, and I took it home and read it, and I called my agent and said, I love this script. And they made the deal, and that's how the show came about.
How many years did it run?
8 years.
And obviously it was a big hit if it ran 8 years. Did you have a lot of fun doing it?
Well, when it went off the air, I think it was in the top 20. But that, again, was Paramount, which then owned the show. They bought it from Des Lou. Wanted to put it in the reruns late at night. And CBS said, no way, not when it's on first run. And so Paramount said, well, we need the money. We've been offered a lot of money for reruns. And CBS said, well, if that's the case, we're not going to renew you. And it went off the air. And then about 3 years later, that became a very common practice that shows that were on first run during the day when they became popular, they would go on very late at night. And we just were a couple of years too early.
Okay, now, obviously, we talked about your acting career. We have to take a break in about a minute, but I want to talk about the Armenian Genocide because I don't think enough people really understand the significance of it and its importance in history. And again, we should never forget, what happened to the past because it could happen again. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back on Ask the Lawyer with Mike Connors, speaking to Mike Connors, the actor Mannix. Welcome back to Connors Corner. We're talking to the actor Mike Connors, Mannix. And as I mentioned before, April 24th is to remember the Armenian Genocide. And Michael, you're one of the most, famous Armenian Americans. Right. Now, when you talk about, the bayoneting and things like that, I think the audience should hear, again, these were not isolated incidents. This happened to, and I don't know if anybody has a good number on the casualties, but more than 1 million people were killed in the Armenian Genocide. Is that not right?
Yes, I've heard the figure at about 1.5 million. Mm-hmm. But as you say, I don't know exactly what the true figures are. But it was great.
And I mean, people were gassed, people were mass executed, and at the time, it didn't seem like the world cared. I mean, it was World War I.
No, it was, well, who are for a long time, people didn't know who an Armenian was. You'd say, I'm Armenian, and they'd say, oh, what's that? There's a story that goes around that I don't know if it's true or not, but there's that phrase that always go 10 minutes late to a gathering or a party or a dinner. It's fashionable. Well, I was told a story that at one point during that period of the massacres, the Turks told the Armenians, we would like to settle this and do this peacefully, and we will have a meeting of all of your top officials of the Armenian people. And they had a big, like a castle on the edge of a mountain with a cliff in the back. And they said, we want all you Armenians to come. There were maybe 100 or so. And you can come, but no weapons. This is a peaceful talk. And the Armenians went to the meeting, and the Turks had guns and all, threw them over the cliff to their death. And the only person that survived was one guest who happened to be 10 minutes late and was able to get away and not be a massacre. So they say, always appear 10 minutes late.
Now, April 24th.
Yes.
That's the date that's been designated to remember the tragedy of the Armenian Genocide. So, history is important, and this is one of the most tragic events in history. And I think we owe it to those people who died to remember their legacy on April 24th. And thank you, Mike Connors, for what you're doing to keep it alive. I know you're doing documentaries and things like that, but we can't forget.
We certainly can't, and I really appreciate it, Mike. Mike Connors is an awfully good name and a person. So, thank you, and keep spreading the word.